Welcome back, everybody. Bit of an unusual look today, I know. Unfortunately, I broke the cameras on my phone, so here I am using my webcam, and I figured at least sweeten the deal a little bit for the audience, and I'll try to have Leo on camera the whole time. Okay, at least you got to see him there. So this question, what are video games to everybody? I've been wondering about this since a couple of videos ago, and I don't want anyone to think when they read that title, oh, here we go again. It's just going to be somebody making a pretentious video talking about how meaningful video games are to him. I promise you it's not that. I'm not going to be getting sentimental or anything of that nature. Actually, the first part of the video is going to be very structured, and I'm going to ask some straightforward questions that I've heard in my life before. Later on, the second part of the video, maybe we can touch on meaning and the value of video games at that point, but you'll see what I'm getting into here with the beginning of the video at least. So some of the questions that I've heard in my life, they include, are video games art? How important is storytelling in video games? And are video games actually just a medium for storytelling? Another question that cropped up about a couple months ago was this question of video games as an experience. Are video games more than just a game? Kind of like what I just alluded to with the storytelling. Right away, I can give you my answer to that. To me, a video game is a game, obviously. But a video game should be focused on the gameplay. And what a video game should be is fun. First and foremost, I want to have fun with a game. I don't want people to be prioritizing anything else because that's just going to detract from the experience for me. So let me take you back now to the mid to late 2000s. I'm in high school. The Wii is coming out, or it's already come out, and we're watching Twilight Princess trailers and all those things like that. We saw Wind Waker on the Wii, or on the GameCube. We saw Okami on the PS2. Now we're seeing Twilight Princess on GameCube. Some other peers are playing Assassin's Creed on the Xbox, and things are looking pretty good. The graphics are outstanding, and we're starting to touch on realism a little bit. So of course, I hear this question for the first time. Are video games art? Can they be considered art? And even though my opinion on that has softened a little bit as I've grown up, my answer remains the same: no. Art is art and games are games. And especially back then. I mean, if you were to tell me that video games are art, I would just say go to a museum. Go look at a painting, and in the first second of laying your eyes on that painting, you are mesmerized by it. There's just something about it that is awesome, and you can appreciate every tiny little detail, and it speaks to you for some reason. Because to me, art is beautiful, or good art should be beautiful. A statue, a sculpture that somebody has worked on, and you can tell it's got thousands of man hours in it. Maybe it's at the front of a temple or something like that on a vacation to Greece. You see the Parthenon or the Temple of Athena. You are struck by its beauty, and I can't say the same thing about a video game. Now, in a video game, it's a little bit different. Video games can still be awesome. Video games can still be astounding, but usually it's the collection of all the components of a video game. It's not just the artwork. It's also the time that you've invested in the gameplay and the adventure. Now, I don't want to diminish some of the things, some of the talents of a lot of the artists who have worked on games in the past. I mean, look at the monsters that exist in all kinds of different games and the creativity that went into creating those monsters and enemies and environments. Metroid Prime, if that game had better graphics, if it had photorealistic graphics, for example, you couldn't tell me that Metroid Prime wasn't artistic. But I just want to keep those two things separate. Art as a medium and video games as a medium can be separated, so that the video games can focus on fun and gameplay, and art can focus on beauty. And don't try to sell me some modern contemporary art like a banana duct taped to a wall. That's just stupid. That's just ugly. So, you know what I'm saying here with art. And I think we can move on to the next point, which is storytelling. And I've got a point here that I just want to bring up, or a question to ask you. Are games more about their stories or their abilities to tell stories? Of course, you're going to get the same answer out of me as you did with art. No. Now, who still values gameplay above all else? I think the majority of people. Who values storytelling above the gameplay? I think this has been a concern with some gamers, and I can't comment on this fully because I don't actually own a PlayStation, and I haven't actually played a lot of PlayStation games, but this is one of the reasons why. I feel like the developers who are contracted under Sony prioritize storytelling over gameplay much of the time. And that's fine. Let them do what they want to do. The market will dictate their successes. But when you have games like Heavy Rain, when you have games like The Last of Us 2, are we getting too far away from video games that, again, in my opinion, should be focused on fun first and foremost, and we're starting to use games simply as a vehicle to tell these stories? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but maybe we should start exploring other genres of this digital medium. Maybe call it something like an interactive movie. And honestly, I don't want to offend anybody, but even what I've seen of Final Fantasy VII, the latest one, some of the cutscenes have you toggling both triggers just so you can climb a wall or do something. That's another story and another topic with me hating interactive cutscenes. Let's just keep games. And if you want to tell a really good story, that's only going to make your game even better. But try not to focus on that. Now, the third point that I want to bring up here with what a game can be or should be is experiencing games versus playing games. And experiencing, I should be saying like this. I should be using these air quotes. This thought came to me when a couple of videos ago. In part 1 of the Modern Gaming Experience, I was talking about cheapening your experience, doing something like taking a game that maybe has a challenging section, putting cheats on, using save states, and just blasting through it. Now, one concern with that is, are you just going against the developer's vision? Are you going against what was intended? And so you're not actually getting the full gaming experience that way. But another thing that I want to talk about here with this gaming experience, there's actually 2 more definitions if you want to call them that. When people start to call games experiences, again, I feel like they are starting to drift further and further away from the gameplay. So focusing on the things like the story and the art. Walking simulators. Another couple of small indie games that I've seen on Steam. There was one, I can't remember the title, but it looked like Limbo, except you were underwater and it was black and white. I was interested in picking it up, but then when I read all the reviews for it, people were saying there's really not much gameplay here. It's mostly just used to tell a story. Again, that's fine. If you want to tell your game through this video game medium, or if you want to tell your story through this video game medium, go ahead. No one's going to stop you. But don't be surprised when your game's not going to sell as well. Don't be surprised when your people rate your game fairly low, fairly mediocre. And I guess the third little thing about this gaming experience as opposed to an actual proper video game, like let's call it what they should be. They should be video games, not experiences. People complain about games that are meant to be hard. People complain about developers who are wasting their time making hard games, challenging games, instead of focusing on the fun. And they blame Dark Souls for this, and they blame the Dark Souls fan base for this. I just want to quickly dispel that. The reason why people like Dark Souls, first and foremost, is because they are fun games. Now, maybe they're not fun to you. Maybe that is because the challenge is actually what ruined the experience for you. And fair enough. I'm not going to argue with you on that. I'm not going to argue what you experienced versus what I experienced. My first run through of Dark Souls was incredibly challenging, and I basically got filtered by one of the bosses, and I couldn't keep on going. But I tried it again. I started to appreciate other aspects of the game, like the exploration, like experimentation with different builds, and I was having a lot of fun with it. Did it change the fact that it was a challenging game? No, it was still very difficult, but it was fun. And so first and foremost, I think people and fans of Dark Souls, and the reason why those games are so popular is not because people want to seem cool and edgy and, oh yeah, we're playing a hard game, we're playing the hardest series. No, we know it's not the hardest series known to man, and that's not the reason why we play them. So I just wanted to dispel that because I read it all the time. People complaining about Dark Souls and the developers and the fans, and that there's a reason for this explosion of supposedly hard games that are too hard to be fun. I disagree. If they're popular, they're probably because they're fun. All right, so that is the whole first section of this video, which is basically what is the purpose of a video game, or what is a video game to you, without touching on the meaning and the value. That was mostly like a definition. Now we're going to get into how much you value games and, what a video game does mean to you. Again, I promised I wouldn't be sentimental or sappy. So are games important to you? I've heard this in different videos before, people saying that games are important. Look, to me, a game can be meaningful. I mean, I've got my memories from childhood all the way up until today. I've shared some of them on the channel before. Christmas memories, whether they're with family or friends or alone. Those are memories that I wouldn't really trade for very much in the world. They're meaningful to me, but I never want to conflate that with video games being very valuable. Of course, I'm going to value things that should be valued above video games. Your family and your friends, your loved ones, yourself, your health, your abilities, your intelligence or your learning, all these other things that have to come first, right? So it's just a little silly to me. I don't know if I want to call it pretentious, or it's just a little bit juvenile, I guess. Sometimes I run across these videos and people are really making a bigger deal out of video games than I think they should be, or at least than I think I would, place. I don't place too much importance on video games, and yet might sound a little bit ironic or a little bit contradictory when I have a video game channel. I'm going to get into that in a moment. Of course, I just want to let anybody know, if you want to leave a comment for why video games are meaningful to you, please go ahead. I just said why they're meaningful to me because I have these memories with them. They're a big part of my life. If you want to leave a comment for why video games are maybe more valuable to you, go ahead as well. I don't want to deride anybody. Maybe you have your own reasons, and I'd be happy to read those as well. So I'm not doing this to insult anybody. I'm not doing this to make fun of everybody. I can still say that I don't agree with people and not be insulting them. Now, let's talk about maybe video games as jobs, video games as work, right? Of course, I appreciate the fact that you guys might have an income from video games. And if I could do that, then I would really love that as well. I'm going to get back to work and what is meaningful work at the end of the video, though. Let me just go on to my next little point here, the next thing I wanted to talk about. Why do I still game? And what else do I prioritize? I kind of alluded to that. My health, my constant learning. In general, I try not to waste a lot of time with too much frivolous stuff, even listening to music. I don't want to get sidetracked spending so many hours a week listening to music when maybe I should put on a couple of educational podcasts. Maybe I should at least spend or allocate 5 to 10 hours a week just kind of bettering myself. So I love video games, and I'm probably never going to drop them. But I have to be very mindful of what I'm actually benefiting from when I'm spending so much time playing games. And then what about the making of the channel? I thought the channel was actually a really good way for me to legitimize my time with video games and to be a little more productive with my time spent. So rather than just playing a game and setting it aside, and you could say what you want about a video game. You improved your reflexes. You worked on your problem solving. In real life, I am very calm under pressure, and I can take most crises coming my way, not be fazed, think very quickly and act accordingly. Maybe video games are to thank for something like that. But the making of the channel was because I just wanted to keep on playing, and yet I didn't want to be feeling like I was wasting my time, getting older and just playing video games. Now let's talk about, speaking of videos, this was an old idea I had. It's going to be blended into this video now instead of being separate. In an ideal world, what would you, the audience, benefit from my videos? And I've got 3 things here in priority. Number 1, again, this is an ideal world. This doesn't mean that I'm actually doing this. But number 1, I think I would set out to inform or educate people. Now, I don't feel like I do that very often because I don't do a lot of research-heavy projects. They're 1 out of every 30 or 40 videos. So I can't say that I'm actually fulfilling that goal. Number 2, though, this is what I think I do more often, is I just want to make people reflect. My brother kind of coined this term for me when I asked him, what am I doing with these food for thought videos? What kind of content is this? And he looked at it and he says, I guess it's like a gaming sociology. I guess you're a little bit concerned about not the gameplay itself necessarily, which is a little ironic with what I talked about in part 1. But when it comes to making content that people are going to be consuming, you do want people to just start thinking about games a little bit differently, to have some different conversations. I'm really interested in the business side of video games. I'm interested in the finances and why people gravitate towards certain games and why people have fun with different types of games and genres as opposed to the others. So there's a lot to explore there, and that's kind of what my Food for Thought playlist is. The third point, and the third reason, I guess, why I would make videos in an ideal world is just to simply entertain. There's no need to complicate it. My top 50 games of all time, videos of that nature, I'm not trying to go out of my way to make anyone think a little more critically. Maybe you just want to put on some videos that are easy to consume. You've had a tough work week. They're a little bit of a break for me to make as well. And there's a different type of fun conversation. It can be a little bit nostalgic when you're talking to people about your old favorites, or you could be discovering new games. A lot of reasons, but it boils down to just wanting to have some fun. Now, I'm going to wrap up this video. I see we're already at 15 minutes and Leo's been out of frame for a while over here. I'll pick him up at the end of the video. This whole thing about, where you find meaning in the work that you do, and how I think I would still be a little bit unsatisfied, for example, even if I could monetize my channel and turn this into a bit of a living. When I was a personal trainer, I was at a pretty snazzy gym, and the base rate for the basic trainer was higher than minimum wage. And then when you became a master trainer after your promotion, Fire Emblem, you got a fairly decent wage. You were actually really making enough to have a modest living in Toronto. And so I got promoted to master trainer in 9 months on the job. And then I had all kinds of clients. Most of the people who came in, because it was a little bit of a shishi gym, very basic, very bare bones, they just wanted to look better. Some of them, they just needed to diet. Some of them, they just needed some accountability with a personal trainer. And if that meant forking out $60 a session just so somebody could tell them what to do and just so that they could burn those calories, then so be it. I had very few clients in between all of those who actually made me feel like I was doing something more with my work. I had some clients who were seeing physiotherapists, and so I would work in tandem with the physiotherapists, and we would basically be trying to rehabilitate these people. We're trying to alleviate chronic pain. We're trying to cure sciatica, plantar fasciitis, back pain, all these different things. Sometimes we're successful. It may seem really silly that somebody pays X amount of dollars per hour to come to me, and we're basically stretching for 70% of the time. But then a couple months later, when they tell me that they had their first full sleep, where they never woke up in the middle of the night with back pain, they slept through the whole night, and they woke up in the morning after 7 hours, no back pain, that's a win. But again, those types of clients were so few and far between, and the industry just was not for me. It was too superficial. I guess how it kind of relates to gaming is because I really value gaming the same way as I kind of did that job, right? Even at the end of the day, even though I've got my priorities here, in an ideal world, I'd be trying to educate people and I'd try to inform everybody of different things. They're just games. They're not saving the world. They're not necessarily changing anyone's lives. But if you have any stories that you want to share, if there are any really deep connections that you've had with people because of video games, those feel-good, heartwarming stories, please don't hesitate to share them in the comments. And if you want to answer what video games are to you, what their purpose are, if you're someone like me who wants to see gameplay and fun first and foremost, and things like story and all those other things, those are great for filling in the bits, but they shouldn't be prioritized, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. So that's about it. Here's the little dog one more time. And hopefully in the next video, I'll have a proper camera again, because next week is going to be a really good one, okay? Thanks everybody for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.